Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest here in Austin, Texas, and recently celebrated 50 years in 12-step recovery. And purpose of these podcasts is to kind of go a little bit back in time to the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it came from. I think that can be really enlightening to people and give folks a different view of maybe what the program was about and could be about. I think there are a few things that we left behind there that could be really helpful to people. I know they were to me. Two of them were two-way prayer, the way they practiced what became our 11th step. And we just did a new video on that. I'd encourage you to go to the two-way prayer website and check it out. Runs about 40 minutes, give you the history and the background of how that important practice came about and teach you how to do it. And the other thing that got left behind somewhat are the four absolutes. And that's what we're focusing on in this particular series. We're trying to go back to the Pioneer program, take kind of an in-depth look at it. And that, of course, led to an in-depth discussion of the four absolutes. And because that was really the heart and the soul of the program: honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. And this episode is going to be about purity. And I hope that doesn't scare the hell out of people and make you go to another podcast. But stick around, because I think you're going to find out that it's a really important aspect of the program and probably quite misunderstood. People think it's totally about sex, and it isn't. It's really about a whole lot more than that. And my guest, who's guiding us through these discussions of the Pioneer program, is Matt D. He's the director of All Addicts Anonymous. And that's a program that dedicates itself to following the original program of AA. And that, of course, includes not only the 12 steps, but focuses squarely on the four absolutes as well. So welcome, Matt. I really appreciate your being with us for this series, and hope you're having some fun with it.
Yeah, certainly am. Thanks.
Good. I'm getting some nice comments from people that always love it when you're on the show, and you bring a depth of knowledge and dedication that is having a really good effect out there. And I asked Matt to kind of raid the All Addicts Anonymous archives and kind of come up with, as we go through the series, articles and things that might be helpful and little known to people that could help them understand some of the depth of the program. And the one that he chose for this episode was titled Frank Bookman's Cure. I put a copy of it in the show notes. And Matt, maybe you could kind of introduce us basically to the article and tell us why you chose it.
Yes, sure. So I actually chose this article. I ran it in the 24 Quarterly, which is a newsletter that I worked on with Tom Jr. and others. This actually was this was the last issue that we did, and this one I actually did completely by myself. I don't mean that. Of course, I had, there were people who were helping and stuff, but at that time there was just there wasn't the whole cooperation that there had been prior to that. This article, it comes out of the book More Twice-Born Men, written by Harold Begbie. Twice-Born Men, I guess he did about the Salvation Army, and then More Twice-Born Men were conversion accounts from people that were in the Oxford group. And so they go through, again, it's like recovery stories, like the back of the big book or something. This was one of those stories, and it really caught my attention. Of course, I've talked already about being a sex addict. So this one really grabbed me because this is an account of it's an Irish rugby player who is, they don't go into great depth. I should have looked up the year that this was written, but it's got to be close to 100 years ago. They don't go into great depth on what his, perversions might have been, or hang-ups or difficulties, call it what you will. He just gives an account, just says that he was in a very serious way, was very hung up. Historically, this thing where you have this duplicity of will, where you don't want to do certain things, but you do it anyway, and why am I
Right.
doing this? And the whole, that whole guilt and shame and everything coming off of it. And anyway, he's at a college in England. Uh, Again, he's a rugby player there, and he bumps into Frank Bookman and knows nothing of him at all. He doesn't know this guy is connected to this, regenerative school, this movement of people who are, turning their lives around, and restoration. I mean, what an unbelievable spiritual figure. But he doesn't know any of the the history of him, or any of his pedigree per se. He just sees this as an authentic person, and he makes up his mind that he's going to go to him and essentially do a fourth and fifth step, admit to him all these things that have been troubling him. And it's a beautiful account of I really feel like the beginning process. Last week we talked about honesty. Like, it is a reflexive movement to go from honesty into purity in a certain way. And frankly, there's a lot of people whose honesty is connected to impurity.
Right.
And again, that doesn't mean just sexual alone, but it's
Secrets.
very hard.
It's the
Yes.
secrets and the shame and all of that sort of stuff that
Yes.
we all carry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He says this, I'm going to quote from the article. There were things about myself that sickened me, disgraced me in my own eyes. He goes on, I knew then that he, Bookman, could clean me out. I told him the whole trouble, everything. Like you say, this was before AA and before there was a fifth step, but it kind of gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it?
It definitely does. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the absolutes. We're talking about morality.
Mm.
And and I know you gave the disclaimer up front, don't run away.
Right.
Don't want to write this yet. There might be something here. And I wanted to say something really quickly, is that I've been around 12 steps for a long time, you for much longer than myself. And occasionally you'll hear this thing where people will make the comment that morality has nothing to do with recovery. And I just want to say, like, morality is this sense of what's right and wrong, this intuitive thing in your guts that's there. And I think your work with two-way prayer is connecting to this thing, to
Right.
get direction. That's like, it's not only does it not have anything to do with the 12 steps, it has everything to do with even prior to getting in. Like, if something in you didn't sense that something was deeply wrong and troubling about your life circumstance, you wouldn't
Mhm.
even walk through the door. This is not only not just part of it, this is part of it. It's so essential.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea that of course, there's a step that even mentions a moral inventory. There, you can't do an end run around these things, and get away with it with sanity, in my opinion. You got to relate to this stuff. So this account is this guy, he comes in and does this. He goes, and you see he admitted everything is in all caps. He goes in and told him everything. And I think everybody who actually starts a recovery and has one that continues starts off where they go in and they say everything that they've done, all the things about themselves that they were ashamed to say, the things that they said, I will never tell another person, to go in, that causes you so much sickness, to compartmentalize the things that you've done to some, basement of yourself that's locked up, and you think that it can be safely kept there.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you got to carry the burden of that thing everywhere you go, all the time. Even if you're not thinking about it, you're still carrying that burden. And this is an account of a guy, just like everybody who gets into this program and has that first step experience and goes into surrender. It then naturally goes into confessing, to admitting all these things and unburdening yourself of all that you're carrying. It's just a beautiful account.
Yeah, with someone who is safe.
Somebody who's safe, somebody who in this case he saw somebody who was authentic. Because this guy obviously was carrying this burden for
Yeah.
some time. He goes in to admit that he's mentioned bits and pieces with different persons, but he
Mhm.
saw something about Frank Bookman that somehow he said, "This is a guy I'm going to go tell these things to." Like he knew this was a place to go.
Absolutely. The article talks about Bookman identifying 3 ingredients of a cure. There's no cure for alcoholism, we know, but I think there is a cure for estrangement. Um, there's an outline of what are the necessary ingredients to overcome the disconnection that I have with God, with other people, and with my true self. I mean, that's what it's all about. And he identifies 3 things. He does it in a paragraph, so it's pretty easy to just kind of gloss over. But I want to take some time and focus in on each one, if you can help us maybe understand it a little bit better. He says the first one is moral chaos is inevitable when there is no singleness of mind. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, so the word chaos, I think, I look at that as confusion. There is
Mhm.
moral confusion. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. You're going to be confused morally, meaning what is right and what's wrong. The whole thing is a mixture of confusion. If there is, in this, he's saying singleness of mind. I was mentioning this some on our last podcast. Yeah, I know this isn't language of the 12 steps, but there is something very powerful to this thing of saying that I make up my mind with God's help, I'm going to live this way, or I'm going to practice this principle, or I'm going to do my prayer time come hell or high water, or I'm going to tell this other person this thing that I did. There's something about having this singleness of mind that it's essential, because we talk about the word decide, in the decision part of the third
Yeah.
step, and the word, I had a Jewish friend of mine help with the etymology of the word. Yeah, I always think the Latin root of this or that or what, but if you think about words that end in similar ways, homicide, suicide, uh homicide. There's actually, I'm a farmer, so there's fungicides and pesticides, and anything that
Hmm.
ends in "ide" means to kill.
To
And
kill, Kill.
to kill.
Yeah.
And it means so homicide is, is kill someone. Suicide is kill yourself. To decide means to take 2 warring factions of yourself, and one of them is killed. One of them is dead and
Mm.
gone. It is to have one left. And that's what it's essential. Otherwise the addict is always subject to one thing or another. Okay, I'm going to do this thing. In the afternoon, something comes along and he says, nah, screw that. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
To have singleness of mind is to be made up
Mm.
at least the level of your intellectual thought here. I'm going to do this thing, period.
Beautiful, beautifully stated and clear. Thank you. Second thing necessary, quote, that the power that purifies, strengthens, and upholds can only become real to those who long for it and open the doors of their cleansed hearts to receive it in silence. Ooh, there's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah, there is a lot there. Uh, we spoke a lot last week about honesty as being a power, or
Yeah.
sanity giving you a certain kind of power to be able to say no. Um, I think there's a power that comes off of this process of getting honest with yourself. I think this thing of purity is to protect that power, to keep it from curdling, from if the human machine is run off of truth, as we were talking about before, then if the machine gets gunked up, it doesn't run properly. And there's that relationship that this thing has as you go out towards union with God, as you go out in further sanity. Um, this thing about purifying I actually read this out of an Oxford group book some years ago. It was talking about purity and its relationship to in the biblical reference to salt. There's these accounts of return to salt, or this reference to salt. Salt at that time was used as a cleansing agent. It was what we use now as like soap. It's to clean. um, on the other end, it is to preserve. You didn't have refrigeration back then. You didn't have ways to store things. If you stored something in salt, it kept in good working order for a long time, right? It didn't spoil, is the point. And uh that's what purity is got going for it. It is a thing that preserves your sanity. It is a thing that preserves your recovery, keeps it from spoiling.
And last week we talked about God as being honest, as being
Yes,
truth. And
yes,
you really have to say the same thing. God is pure. And that's where the
yes,
standards came from. They're not descriptions
yes,
of us. They're descriptions of God. That God is
yes,
honest, pure, unselfish, loving. And then the question really becomes, what is the condition of my connecting link with that? And that's where purity comes in. The
yes,
real it's a word people don't like. They're just real
yeah,
uncomfortable with it.
yeah,
It sounds puritanical. It's just not attractive. But what it
yes,
really, I think, has at its base is, where's the contamination?
yes,
Where is the
yes,
contamination? And how
yes,
much contamination can we allow in our relationship with God?
yes. Yeah, if you're doing an experiment in a laboratory somewhere, and there's a
Yeah.
certain amount of contamination that you allow for to be able to trust the experiment, if
Mhm.
the contamination level goes beyond that, you have to start the thing over again. It's like
Yeah.
in this experiment, there's not a lot of room for allowing this thing to get gunked up with things. It's very important that the procedure, the experiment is done. If you're going to have the right kind of results, it's done as cleanly as possible.
Yeah. So what's the condition? We do the St. Francis prayer in 12 and 12, make me a channel of
Yeah.
thy
Yes.
peace. So what's
Yes.
the condition of the channel? It's the link between God and myself that I'm looking at.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And there's impurities there. If I
Yes.
really learn to look,
Yes.
they're gonna be revealed to me. And that's not
Yes.
a terrible thing, you know. It's again back to the honesty thing. It's the truth.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so yeah, I'm glad you're making the link between those two, the standards as they're called. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And he says here, this is a thing you want to be upheld by. This power, you want to be upheld by this power. You
Mm,
need it. You desperately need it a day at a time. Without it, you're sunk.
right.
And he's saying that it becomes real to those who long for it. This is the thing that you 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 really do are yearning for something. I think that this is what makes recovery easy in a way, is that You find out there's this kind of jokey statement that people make in the program. There's only two things you change: you stop drinking and you change everything or something, and
Mhm.
it's true, and it's kind of funny in its own way, but uh um I'm losing my thread.
We're talking about longing for it and
Yeah,
then
yes, thank you. Thank you.
opening.
You're so good at bringing me back because I lose my threads
I
all
have
the
notes.
time. Oh, good. Well, this thing is the thing that makes this transition so easy is that you were yearning for something all along. You just find out the objects in which were the center of it were all wrong. You had yourself where you should have had God, and you had this substance or this behavior where you should have had, things like helping others or, other acts. And all of a sudden, when those things get baptized, you're just a hairline fracture between, there's a article Tom wrote many years ago called The Saint and the Addict. What do they have in common? They're both mystics in their own way. It's like the difference between the two is just a hairline difference. Now it's huge, but it's just a little bit different. And you are yearning for something.
Mm.
And it's just a matter of getting that thing right at the center of what it is that you yearn for. He says then that you open the door of your cleansed heart to receive it in silence. And I think that's an important word there, silence, because man, we were mentioning earlier about the singleness of mind, and we talked last week about sanity. Sanity is to have peace of mind. And this is so part of the two-way prayer method is, there you try to sit down and be silent, and there is a jungle of things
Right.
that are there, and that's why we need why we need the absolutes to make some kind of discerning sense out of what this stuff is, inside.
Third point, no soul truly conscious of that power, the higher power, can be satisfied with its own salvation. If you sit still, Bookman said, it's hopeless. Help other men and women.
Yeah,
There's
that's
a
critical.
flow. There's a flow.
There is it is a reflex. It is you come in and you get this strength, you get this newfound sanity, and it produces joy and and a certain amount of vitality. You're not wasting it in the same way. And
There's
it's like,
energy in it that when you connect to the higher power, focus on that word power. You have accessed a source of energy, all right, that's coming into you that was denied to you before. And anybody who knows depression knows what it's like. There's no energy.
yeah, yep.
You
Yeah,
know?
no, it's exactly that. And the thing is that you were talking about this too, about unmanageability. We're saying that, unmanageability, the prospect of unmanageability or the potential of it increases the longer you're at this thing. This is the same thing that happens here. If you're given this power, you better use it right, because if you
Right.
don't, you can undo yourself with more intensity than ever. Right? I think this is why the big book makes such a big deal about resentment. You resented people before, but you got mad for about 10 minutes and then you got drunk. It's like, and you had so little vitality around that anyway, right? So you couldn't really
Yeah.
hate anybody with any ferocity. Boy, you get sober, and my God, can you hate somebody with all your might?
Keep that going for years.
You got a certain strength. If you do not use that power or that strength in the right way, it will come out in your weakness and in your places of weakness. And that's almost always in the place of passion. And passion includes both food and sex, and also anger.
And
And
lots of
and
other
the
things. We're going to get to those.
Yes,
We're
yes.
going to get to that list.
And
Let me
you want to
just
protect it.
yeah, let me sum up here because it's in the I think the next
Yes.
paragraph in the article. Bookman says, and it's really a repetition, I think, of the 3 points. Number 1, no help could come to a soul that didn't really want it. No purity could come to a heart that prayed for it, but not yet. No power could come into a life that was selfish.
Yeah.
And there's the 3 nicely restated, I guess.
Yes, you got to really want this thing in a unity. Addiction is a lack of internal unity. I'm not going to do this thing anymore, and you end up doing it. You've got like these warring members inside yourself. You every once in a while you think you're unified, and then all of a sudden you find out there's disagreements or disorder in the house of the person. There's the will wants to do one thing, and the emotions are being, trying to hijack it, and the intellect saying, "Oh no, don't do that." And it's a whole thing. And when there's a unity of you that says, "I want this thing, I really do," there's a hope that didn't exist when the house is in disorder.
And this thing is revealed to us. I don't know that in the beginning any drunk or addict is going to sit down and say, "Oh, I just love you, God." I don't even know God. I'm not in contact with God. That's my problem.
Yeah.
That's my problem. But I want wholeness. I want peace of mind.
Yes.
I want to be who I was meant to be, because I know in my heart and soul I am not.
Yeah.
And that's what's eaten me alive. And the stuff that was at one time covering it up doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Got to find something else.
Yep. Yeah. And this reference to, wanting purity, but not yet. That's, St. Augustine's statement. And then lastly, no power could come into a life that was selfish. It's like, I think it's because a person who is selfish, and you're talking to one here, selfishness always, it always blows through resources, and especially power more than anything else. I mean, it's just anything that it's been given is going to use for its own good, or its own self. It's not for its own good, but for its own self. And you're not going to have any really left over, or what little you have left over, God help you to use it to get onto this program with. But that's just typical of selfishness, is this depletion of vitality, because it's always being used towards your own means, your own desires, your own wants, right?
Yeah, and if I'm drawing from myself, there's a very limited amount of power. And that's what starts running out. If I'm drawing from God, and so that channel connecting link is pure, the power is infinite, and it's not exhausting.
Yeah.
It's life-giving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. There's a quote, I don't have it in front of me, but Frank Bookman he's talking about relating to sexual purity, but he's saying about temptation, it's easier to divert a stream than it is to dam a river.
Right.
And it's an interesting, so he's saying the point is try to catch this stuff up front. I think he gives a series of ways in which it starts. It starts with the look, then the thought, then the I say obsession, and then I say the slip, with the fall. It starts that way, but there's an interesting, this interesting thing about diverting a small stream. It means that stream is it hasn't been dammed. It's actually being diverted. It's being moved in another direction, and the big book makes reference to, like, there is a connection between this desire for sex that we should be using in a right way.
That's libido. It's life-giving.
and to that there is a certain help that comes to a person who does 12-step work, like go out and do work, and that's a way of diverting the stream. It's not damming the thing up, it's giving you a kind of help with that vitality.
It's the difference between repression and sublimation.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's a difficult distinction, but it's a very important one. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
That if I push it down, put it in the basement, lock it up, all right, it's going to fester. And that's repression. That's
Yeah.
and that's your stream that you're not diverting. You're trying to build a dam. It's going to break.
Yep.
But if you can sublimate it, then you're taking that energy, that sexual energy, which is what the mystics, it's quite amazing. I was reading one of the McGinn, one of the best authors on mysticism, and he said that their favorite writing was the Song of Songs. That's the one that they commented on most. Wasn't the Psalms, wasn't the scripture, the New Testament. It was the song of love stories.
Yeah. Yep.
That love, it was flowing through them, not in a sexual way, but in a way that is more than,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
fascinating.
when you're given that kind of vitality. I mean, you think about I probably shouldn't be going down this road too far, but you think about
Oh, what the hell?
someone.
Go ahead, Matt.
You think about someone like Bill Wilson. I mean, there is this prophets of old, if you will. Every time they were given a task, we've talked about this before, but every time they're given a task, they were also given the currency, meaning the power to carry it out. Like if you're working for someone in construction and you're going to be building something, they give you, here's the money you need to build this thing, right? Bill Wilson was given a certain task, and he also was given a certain strength to carry this thing out. And again, I think we're talking about it now. Everybody who's in the program is given a certain amount of strength to be used to help another person with. And if you don't do that, that vitality you can use to again, you could do yourself real harm with it. It's one of the best functions or ways to use this strength is to help other people. There's a saying in the Oxford group, if you're not winning, you're sinning.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things that's got this, beautiful double meaning. In one sense, it's like if God's given you this sanity, this conversion, this new way to live, and you're sitting on your backside not helping other people, that is a sin. Don't take that in a religious way. I just mean that means
Right.
you're missing the mark here, buddy. You've been given something. And then the other is if you're not winning people, it may be because you're sinning, meaning that your life isn't right, that you're not, this guy was attracted to Frank Bookman for a reason. I guarantee that a central reason for it was this was a guy who was pure. I mean, this was a guy who was really clean. He meant what he said. He was honest. He was authentic. You can't put on a show like that. It's there. And he saw
Right.
it in him and he went to him to go. He doesn't know this guy's has anything to do with the Oxford group or admitting things about yourself. He just sees someone, I'm going to go talk to this guy about myself and tell him these things. Uh, that's this thing. If you've got something that's authentic, people can see it. And the next thing you know, you're helping people. So if you're not winning in that sense, you're sinning somewhere. Something isn't right in your life.
Again, it's going to repeat almost the three same things. Ask with singleness of mind, and it shall be given you. Seek with singleness of desire, and you shall find. Knock with singleness of purpose, and it shall be opened for you. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. In AAA, when you describe purity, you break it down into workable, tangible elements. And I'd like you to comment on that, because you say it's purity of mind, purity of body, purity of the emotions, purity of heart, sexual purity. So if you would, let's work us through each one of those, what that has come to mean for you. So purity of mind, let's start with that.
Yeah, well, we've been referring to
Mhm.
sanity, you know, as peace of mind, you know, and again, there is so much more to this than just you know, about somebody's going to come in and tell me how and I'm going to, you know, perform the sex act or not or whatever else. It's so beyond just that alone. Um, Purity of mind is means purity at the level of thought. Purity
Yeah,
just means cleanliness, you know.
right.
It's just purity of
Non-contamination,
thought.
yeah,
It's
not
exactly right.
contaminated, not contaminated. So what's going on in my mind? What's my thought life like? I have to watch that.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
step 10 takes on it's not just a checklist of 15 things at the end of the day. It's watchfulness,
Yes. And there,
mindfulness.
and again, there's this relationship back and forth between honesty and purity, and from purity back to honesty again. You know, that's like I almost think of it as you know, like Sri Ramakrishna gave this analogy of a tree. You know, it needs to have a fence around it to protect it from goats. It's like the I don't mean to sound so pious here or something, but the tree of honesty or whatever, this initial thing that's growing and is fragile, it if it has the protective fence of purity around it,
Mm,
it has a chance to grow. If it doesn't, the thing's gonna just get eaten away by impure thoughts of one kind or another, or this dirty SOB is doing this to me at work, and this person's a jerk, and boy, look at his wife, or whatever those things are. They're
right,
going to eat away at whatever you've been given through this experience of truth and sanity. You know, they're just going to eat it away. This is a protective thing, and it helps you protect your mind.
right.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Purity of body.
Yeah, I think this one is key, and of course, it never gets, or very often doesn't get talked about, 12-step circles with
Right.
the cakes and the coffee and the
Ooh.
cigarette.
Yeah, I was drinking 26 cups of coffee. I counted them one night when I first came into recovery. Why the hell can't I sleep? Uh,
Yeah, purity of body this one is I think it's critical because you know, we're talking about the human being here as a psychophysical organism, these different levels of the person. I mean, there is this base level of one's own body. Then
right,
there is the thought. You know, we're talking about things of the heart, which relate to like the soul and the spirit. I mean, this is a complex thing that
yeah,
we're referring to, but at this low level, the purity of body is related to your senses, really, and it means, what is it that is taken in? Breathing in bad air makes you sick. Eating, you know, bad food makes you sick. There's also the thing of impressions that come in through the senses themselves. Um, you don't think of it, but even hearing things can make you sick. Um, Things that you look at can make you sick. Um, there's so the purity of body is a relationship to this thing that is the human body, and what it is that it takes in. There's the saying in AA, don't take the first drink. Well, there's a subtler thing that has to do with the right working of the human person. If you take in wrong thoughts or wrong images, um, that can do you harm, just like if you take in a harmful substance like alcohol. So purity of body is to protect this body from impure things, everything from food, to air, to the impressions that you take in.
Yeah, you go back historically and you look at the Jewish purity codes. It wasn't so much about holiness. It was let's look at how our bodies can get contaminated.
Yeah.
And we better
Yeah.
establish some codes around that so we don't get sick and die.
Yeah. I was reading an article this morning. It's from a alternative cancer doctor that has helped a lot of people with cancer that I even know personally. And he was talking about it was about anxiety, and he was just saying that when a person is in an anxious state, their sympathetic dominant system is overacting, right? So the brain and your heart is pumping. The other organs, like the digestive system and things like that, are being kind of compromised for your body's set up to react quickly because it thinks it's an emergency condition, right? And he's saying then there is adrenaline is produced, and just like that tenses up muscles in different parts of the body. He was saying that nutrition, it's very hard for nutrition to make its way to different parts of the body at when you're in such a state. You think, my God, an addict is in this kind of state all the time, that always, so tense, and everything else, the ability for healing to make its way. It's like, trying to penetrate a rock or something. All these things, they're so related, they're related without a doubt.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons for the prayer and meditation, for the quiet time in the morning being so
It is.
important to,
It is.
get
It
yourself
is.
centered.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
And you can't do an end run around the physical body. I mean, I
No.
know, you think you can ignore it, and you can say, it's not my philosophy to do anything with the body, and but there's no way around it. I mean, this is the
And they're
thing
all
that helps you.
connected. They're all
They're all
connected.
connected. They're all
And
connected.
one of the things about AAA that I like is, I mean, when you start identifying these things, everybody's going to need, at least 3 programs to go to, and
Yeah.
many of us, many more,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it shows up in gambling, it shows up in food, it shows up in sex, it shows up in work. It
Yeah.
it 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 manifests itself, but it's very similar at its core. It's seeking outside of true self with a capital S, God, if you want, um, where I'm meant to be in relationship, and there's something distorted in that relation. It's not there. It's not fulfilling its function, and so I go
Yeah.
looking elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is sanity to protect sanity.
Mm.
It is this thing, it, not that we're able to do this all the time or very much, but is this thought one that is worthy of ingesting or consenting to?
Yeah.
Is this food that I have in front of me, is it conducive to sanity, or is this a thing that could do me harm? I mean,
Hmm.
what you eat affects how you think. I mean, without a doubt, obviously AA in a sense is all about a dietary thing called alcohol. You're not going to consume this substance anymore. There is a great impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I want to learn about myself, it's not that necessarily that I'm accomplishing it every moment of the day, but I'm growing in my awareness
Yeah.
of
Yep.
this force, this alternate force in my life
Yeah.
that really is self-destructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And you're always going to be there's just some key places that this is a thing Tom used to say years ago. I think there were five big things he said to really watch for. Uh, One was prayer and meditation, one was exercise, one was
Mm,
sex,
mm,
one was diet, and one was study. And it's like somewhere you're going to have one or two of those things haywire.
Right.
You're going to be doing pretty good with your prayer and meditation, but eating kind of not so sanely.
Hmm.
You're always going to have that going, but this is just, calmly, quietly going back to the first absolute honesty and just say, how am I doing in these particular areas? Uh, not because, again, not because I'm trying to be the best person on earth, the most recovered person that ever existed or anything else.
Right.
It's because I'm trying to protect this strength of sanity that I've been given. And it has a higher function. There are people around me that could use my help, that I could serve. There's things that I can do, resourceful and ways that I can function in which is pleasing to God. And that's what we're talking about here.
God has a plan for my life.
Yeah.
Am I living in fulfillment of that plan? Or
And
am
there
I
are,
cutting my life short?
and you hang around this thing long enough, you'll see, you know, dozens and dozens of cases of people who get cut short in that pursuit or that journey
Right.
out of, I hate to say it, sexual pleasures. They just, I'm gonna, this is something I really want. I don't, it might destroy my family, but I'm just not happy. And this other person's going to make me happy or whatever that may be. I don't want to go into specifics too much, but to say that this is one place where it's very possible to make a terrible mistake, because it deals with so many sacred things that relate to God and man.
And in any we kind of touched on this, but let's go a little bit deeper into it. It's like each fellowship has its own singleness of purpose, and that's good in the beginning.
Yeah.
um, but if it just stays focused on that, so in AA it's, well, don't drink, but sexual misconduct, acting out, it's pretty rampant
Yeah. Yeah.
and growing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's honestly, in a way, and I know, again, it's critically important in the beginning. You do not
Right.
bother with the, somebody who's shaking with the DTs to talk about how they're biting their fingernails too much, or eating too much chocolate cake. It's just
Or you're
not the
not
right time.
pleasing God.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you want
But
to open the door wide.
at a certain point, it becomes contrary to the 12 steps themselves. There's such key places, where it says you turn your will and life over to God.
Right.
It doesn't say a compartmentalized section of your ugly life.
Turn your
It's
drinking
saying,
over to God.
yeah, it says the whole thing, and it says practice these principles in all your affairs. It's saying all of them, the whole thing. And then the thing of all these defects of character. This is like, it's not a compartmentalized thing, where Bill Wilson has a spiritual experience with God, and this thing is going to just touch one little part. This is the whole man, the
Right.
soul, the spirit, the body. This is the whole thing. And if we compartmentalize that help, the help we receive is going to be compartmentalized. you
So
know
that kind of brings us to steps 6 and 7,
it
which
does.
I think are probably the most misunderstood steps. They're given some of the least attention. They're only 2 paragraphs and they're short in the big book. But a footnote in Ernie Kurtz's book, Not God, The History of AA, it's where I first discovered that he says, Wilson said, Bill Wilson said, he put the 4 absolutes into steps 6 and 7. That's where you'll find them conceptually. That was a revelation to me. Opened those steps up in a way that I had not had them open to me before. They're practical. Four absolutes. You want to know what 6 and 7 are about? It's all of the stuff we're talking about here. It's not just alcohol. It's all the different departments of my life.
Yeah.
It's a second surrender. We're looking at the Pioneer program. That's the emphasis of this series. And they often talked about two surrenders. You might get the guy or the gal to surrender in the hospital over the alcohol. That was one surrender. But then there was a different surrender. There was a deeper surrender. And that's the everything, Matt, that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you can't get to the second surrender if you don't have the first. If you don't say, look, with God's help, one day at a time, I will do this program so I don't drink. But at a certain point, you're going to come up to the 6 and 7 step and say, okay, this thing is about every single thing that stands in the way of myself and God. And that could be a destructive emotion. It could be a destructive eating habit. It
Right.
could be a sexual thing. Whatever that thing may be, you become, with God's help, entirely ready to have him take that thing away. You may find, as many of us do, that it may not be taken away right away. Maybe, maybe the thing we needed more than what we were asking for is humility, and part of the failing process brings us closer to that. But
I may have a different interpretation on 6 that we talk about having them taken away. Well, what I have found in my own life is they are taken away at that moment. At that moment of connection and surrender, they are gone.
Yeah, that's true.
But I have free will, and 3 seconds later, I am free to pick them up one more time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And again, that comes back around to this thing of, helping other people. Frank Bookman used to say that he used his sins, if you will, as a like a team of horses. It's like we have these failings, and
Right.
we're gonna, hopefully, with God's help, we're working on them. But they do allow us to be able to relate to other people in a way. Like he really did. He sought out to use them. He'd go in and tell somebody, hey, this is what's currently going on with me. Here's where I'm having some trouble, or here's something I got that's, and then the other person would open up and talk about themselves. I guess what I mean to say is, even in God's world, these defects of character, these things that we do that are wrong, they are part, as Tom says, a part of the laboratory. This is part of the work, and they can be of good use for you.
Yeah, you look at the prophets. I mean, he didn't. They weren't chosen because of their exemplary lives.
Yeah. Yes.
Almost every one of them had deep flaws.
Yes.
But
there's a critical thing of being willing to have these things get removed, whatever it is that blocks me from God. Right.
That's right.
And that's an impurity, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think it's in Tom's book. I don't want to sound too holy, but I was reading this morning The Cloud of Unknowing, 14th century mystic writing. I'll put it in the show notes. There's a really good translation of it that's out, and it has the prayer for purity. I'm going to read it. This is so. I mean, this is an old prayer because it's an old problem, and it says, "God, to you all hearts are open. To you all longings speak, and to you no secrets are hidden. I beg you, purify the intentions of my heart through the unspeakable gift of your grace, so I can love you with all I am and praise you for all you are." I mean, that's the purity. It's the state of my soul in relationship to the Creator. It's that channel. It's the condition of that channel. And that channel's going to line up with contamination. And I got to keep an eye on it. And I've got to go to the source to flush it out. I like what you're saying, to divert it into some other areas of my life. So it's a lot. It's sex. Yeah. You can't get around that. But it's more than sex, the purity element. So anytime I mention the four absolutes, it's the one word that people, always react negatively to. So I thank you, Matt, for taking us on a deeper dive into really what's going on here. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, very much. I was going to say, just, I know we're wrapping it up, but that,
yeah. Did you get that feeling?
Obvious. Well, the purity of the emotions, we obviously,
Yes,
understand,
yes.
that refers to hate or self-pity or
Right.
lust or whatever.
Yeah.
Purity of heart is and this touches this collect for purity touches on the heart. All of these things keep coming back to the heart.
Yeah.
And the heart is the place of where the will is carried out. And this thing about a good tree having, it will bear good fruit. That's the action that comes from what you do, is the fruit of your labor. If you can get right with purity, there's a reason this thing is so frightening to people. There's a reason. There's something behind it. There's a Carl Jung statement that's what you're most looking for will be found where you least expect it.
Right.
It's very possible that there's something here.
Yeah.
If you're at all afraid or nervous about this thing, take a little time to slowly try to discover if there's something here. Don't be quick to just say it. No, this just sounds like Blue Nose, interfering with my joy kind of thing.
Right.
There may be something really here. Just try to look into it. Be open to that possibility.
That's right. One of Jung's statements, I don't know if this is the one you're referring to, but those people who have a hard time finding God haven't looked low enough.
Yeah.
And it's in our weaknesses and it's in our
Yes.
shadow
Yes.
that we're going to make the real discoveries. And if we just try to keep them locked up in the basement, it isn't going to work. You got to bring them puppies up the stairs and face them. And face them with God, and then I'm being honest, and I'm on my way towards purity in my life.
And the result is the fruit that comes from this thing. God, you never enjoy your life like when you have purity going.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being on the other side of it, and I just said, I'm not going to let anybody take this away from me. And my God, I didn't realize how much I was clinging on to my own suffering and my own dissatisfaction. And it was evident in the fact that I was always returning to this thing unsatisfied and always trying to trick it up and make it more exciting for myself.
And there's never enough of it.
There's never enough of it. But this thing of purity in your life gives you something that you cannot get. It doesn't mean that you never have sex again by any means. It means that you live a kind of joy and a kind of protection from God as your refuge. Something that you don't want to lose it. You do not. It's like gambling. You've got something now you don't want to lose, and you want to share it with others.
That's
yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. Wonderful dive, and appreciate the conversation and all that you shared and brought to this. We're going to put a number of those things in the show notes, so you can access those, and the article about Bookman will be there as well. And let's see, purity on Unselfishness is on the agenda for next week. So we'll do another deep dive into that. And I hope you guys are really enjoying this. And if you want to get in touch with Matt, and if you want to attend a meeting of All Addicts Anonymous, putting that in the show notes as well. So I thank everybody for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.